There is a battle happening every single day, and most people don't even realize they're in it. It doesn't make noise, it doesn't announce itself, it doesn't come with warning signs or visible enemies, yet it quietly shapes every decision you make, every habit you form, and ultimately the direction your life takes. This battle is not fought with fists or weapons, it is fought in the mind, in the heart, and in the unseen space between desire and obedience. It is the battle between the flesh and the spirit. To walk by the Spirit is not a religious phrase meant to sound poetic or distant. It is a daily choice, a daily surrender, a daily decision to live, guided by something higher than impulse, fear, ego, or emotion. Most people live reacting to life. They wake up driven by stress, controlled by cravings, ruled by old wounds and pulled by distractions. They live on autopilot, repeating cycles they don't understand. But when someone begins to walk by the Spirit, everything changes. Their inner world shifts, their reactions change, their perspective deepens, and slowly, almost quietly, their destiny begins to realign. This is not an easy path. In fact, it is often the hardest one. Walking by the Spirit means choosing discipline over comfort, truth over illusion, growth over familiarity. It means saying no when everything in you wants to say yes. It means standing firm when it would be easier to blend in. It means trusting a process you cannot fully see, and yet this is the path that leads to peace, clarity, strength, and purpose. Many people think destiny is something fixed, something written far away beyond their reach. But destiny is shaped daily, moment by moment, by the choices you make when no one is watching, by the voice you listen to when you're tired, by the direction you choose when you're confused, by whether you follow the pull of the flesh or the quiet guidance of the Spirit. This journey is not about perfection, it's about alignment. It's about learning to recognize the subtle voice that leads you toward life, growth, and truth. And it's about understanding that every small decision carries weight, because every step either draws you closer to who you were meant to become or keeps you trapped in who you've always been. What follows is not theory. It is a deep look into the daily battle that shapes your destiny. A battle you are already in, whether you realize it or not. And it begins with understanding what it truly means to walk by the Spirit. The hidden war inside you. Every human being carries a battlefield within. It is not visible to the eyes, yet it influences every emotion, reaction, and decision you make. This inner conflict is ancient, and it exists in every culture, every belief system, and every generation. It is the struggle between the part of you that seeks comfort, pleasure, control, and immediate gratification, and the part of you that longs for growth, purpose, and truth. The flesh wants what is easy. It seeks what feels good now. It avoids discomfort, avoids responsibility, and resists change. The flesh reacts. It gets offended quickly. It desires approval. It wants to be seen, validated, and satisfied without delay. It thrives on habits, patterns, and emotional impulses. The Spirit, on the other hand, operates on an entirely different level. It speaks quietly. It doesn't rush. It doesn't force. It calls you forward rather than pulling you sideways. It invites you to grow even when growth hurts. It urges you to choose patience when anger feels justified. It leads you toward discipline when laziness feels comfortable. It asks you to trust when fear demands control. This inner war is not something you can escape. You don't overcome it once and for all. You face it every day. Every morning you wake up, the battle begins again. Not because you are weak, but because growth requires resistance. Most people lose this battle, not because they are evil or broken, but because they are unaware. They don't recognize the voice of the flesh, so they mistake it for intuition. They don't recognize the voice of the Spirit, so they ignore it. Over time, this leads to confusion, frustration, and a sense of being stuck. The flesh often disguises itself as logic. It says things like, "You deserve this. You can start tomorrow." It's not that serious, or everyone else is doing it. It justifies impatience, indulgence, and compromise. And because it speaks in a familiar tone, many people assume it must be right. The Spirit speaks differently. It doesn't shout, it nudges. It brings clarity rather than comfort. It often asks you to pause when you want to rush. It asks you to forgive when you want revenge. It calls you to discipline when you want to escape. And because its voice is subtle, it requires stillness to hear. This is why silence is so powerful. In silence, the noise of the flesh weakens. In stillness, the voice of the Spirit becomes clearer. But modern life is designed to keep you distracted. Constant noise, endless scrolling, emotional overstimulation, all of it drowns out the inner voice that leads you forward. Walking by the Spirit begins with awareness. You start noticing your reactions instead of being controlled by them. You begin to pause before speaking. You question your impulses instead of obeying them. You become curious about your thoughts rather than assuming they are all true. This awareness is uncomfortable at first. It exposes patterns you've ignored. It reveals habits you've justified. It shines light on areas where you've been operating on autopilot. But this discomfort is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of awakening. As you become more aware, you begin to see how often the flesh wants to lead you backward, toward old habits, old fears, old identities. The flesh clings to what is familiar, even if it is destructive. The Spirit, however, pulls you toward what is unfamiliar but necessary. This is why growth often feels lonely. When you start walking by the Spirit, you may notice that your priorities change. Conversations that once entertained you now feel empty. Habits that once comforted you now feel draining. Environments that once felt safe begin to feel restrictive. This is not loss. This is alignment. The Spirit does not remove things from your life to punish you. It removes what no longer matches where you are going. It creates space for something greater. But the flesh resists this process because it fears the unknown. The battle becomes most intense when you are on the verge of growth. That's when doubt becomes loud, temptation increases, old patterns resurface. It's not coincidence, it's resistance. The closer you get to becoming who you're meant to be, the stronger the pull to stay who you were. This is where many people give up. They misinterpret resistance as a sign they're on the wrong path, when in reality, it's proof they're on the right one. The presence of struggle does not mean absence of purpose. Often, it means the opposite. Walking by the Spirit means learning to move forward even when it's uncomfortable. It means choosing long-term peace over short-term pleasure. It means trusting that discipline today produces freedom tomorrow. It means understanding that every small choice either strengthens your spirit or feeds your flesh. And this is the key truth most people miss. The battle is won in small moments, not dramatic ones. It's won when you choose restraint instead of reaction, when you choose silence instead of argument, when you choose rest instead of escape, when you choose integrity instead of approval. These moments may seem insignificant, but they compound. Over time, they shape your character. They shape your direction. They shape your destiny. The person you become is not the result of one big decision. It is the result of thousands of small ones, choices made when no one is watching, when it would be easier to give in, when the path of least resistance is calling your name. Walking by the Spirit is not about being perfect. It's about being conscious. It's about learning to listen, to pause, to choose wisely. And once you begin this journey, you'll realize something powerful. The battle never truly ends, but you grow stronger with every step. And as you grow stronger, the voice of the Spirit becomes clearer, the pull of the flesh becomes weaker, and slowly, steadily, your life begins to reflect the destiny that was always waiting for you. The moment you begin to walk by the Spirit, something subtle yet powerful starts to shift inside you. At first, it doesn't feel dramatic. There is no thunder, no sudden clarity, no instant transformation. What happens instead is quieter and far more profound. Your inner world begins to rearrange itself. Thoughts you once accepted without question begin to feel foreign. Reactions that once felt automatic start to slow down. And in that space between impulse and action, something new is born: awareness. This is where the real transformation begins. Most people believe change happens through effort alone. They think discipline is about forcing yourself to do better, to be stronger, to resist temptation with sheer willpower. But walking by the Spirit reveals something deeper. Real change does not begin with control, but with alignment. When your inner life aligns with truth, your behavior follows naturally. You don't have to fight yourself constantly. You begin to move with intention instead of resistance. This is why so many people feel exhausted even when they're trying to improve. They are fighting themselves instead of understanding themselves. They are trying to suppress desires instead of transforming them. They are trying to silence emotions instead of listening to what those emotions are trying to reveal. The Spirit does not work through suppression, it works through illumination. When you walk by the Spirit, you begin to notice how much of your daily behavior is driven by fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being alone, fear of not being enough, fear of missing out. These fears quietly shape your decisions. Even when you think you're acting freely, they push you into relationships that drain you. They keep you stuck in habits that no longer serve you. They make you say yes when your soul is screaming no. But the Spirit does not operate through fear. It operates through truth, and truth, when recognized, has a calming effect. It doesn't rush. It doesn't panic. It doesn't need to prove itself. It simply is. As you grow more sensitive to the Spirit's guidance, you begin to recognize the difference between urgency and clarity. Urgency feels anxious. It pressures you. It tells you something bad will happen if you don't act immediately. Clarity, on the other hand, feels steady. Even when it leads you into difficult decisions, it carries a strange sense of peace. This is one of the most important signs that you are walking by the Spirit. You feel grounded even when life is uncertain, not because everything is going well, but because your center has shifted. You are no longer anchored in circumstances. You are anchored in conviction. Your thoughts begin to change first. You become more aware of the stories you tell yourself. You notice how often your mind jumps to worst-case scenarios. You catch the self-criticism, the doubt, the inner accusations, and instead of identifying with them, you begin to observe them. This distance is crucial. It allows you to choose which thoughts deserve your attention and which ones do not. Walking by the Spirit teaches you that not every thought is yours. Some are habits, some are fears learned long ago, some are echoes of other people's expectations, and some are simply noise. When you stop automatically believing everything your mind says, you gain freedom. You stop reacting blindly and start responding consciously. This inner shift affects your emotions as well. You don't become emotionless, you become emotionally intelligent. You still feel anger, sadness, disappointment, and frustration, but they no longer control you. You learn to sit with them without being consumed by them. You learn that emotions are signals, not commands. This is especially powerful because most destructive decisions are made in emotional states. When people are hurt, they lash out. When they feel rejected, they chase validation. When they feel empty, they seek distraction. The Spirit teaches you to pause in those moments, to breathe, to reflect, to choose a response that aligns with who you are becoming, not who you used to be. And this is where many people misunderstand spiritual growth. They think it means becoming passive, soft, or detached from reality. In truth, walking by the Spirit makes you stronger, not weaker. It gives you the ability to stand firm without aggression, to say no without guilt, to walk away without bitterness, to endure discomfort without losing yourself. You begin to realize that peace is not the absence of problems, but the presence of alignment. When your inner world is aligned with truth, external chaos loses its power over you. You may still face challenges, but they no longer define you. You stop measuring your worth by outcomes and start measuring it by integrity. Another profound shift happens in how you relate to time. The flesh is impatient. It wants results now. It wants proof, validation, and rewards immediately. The spirit understands timing. It teaches you that some things must unfold slowly, that growth cannot be rushed, that preparation often takes longer than the breakthrough itself. This is why walking by the Spirit requires trust, not blind trust, but grounded trust. Trust that what is unfolding in you has purpose, even when you can't see the full picture. Trust that delays are not denials. Trust that silence is not absence. You begin to see that some of the most important work happens in seasons where nothing seems to be happening. In those quiet periods, your character is being shaped. Your patience is being strengthened. Your motives are being refined. You are being prepared for something that requires maturity, not haste. As this understanding deepens, your relationship with struggle changes. You stop seeing difficulties as punishments and start seeing them as training. You begin to ask different questions. Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "What is this teaching me?" Instead of, "When will this end?" you ask, "Who am I becoming through this?" This shift is powerful because it gives meaning to pain, and when pain has meaning, it loses its ability to break you. Walking by the Spirit also transforms how you relate to other people. You become less reactive and more discerning. You stop taking everything personally. You recognize that people act from their own wounds, fears, and limitations. This doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect, but it means you don't internalize it. You become more selective with your energy. You realize that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. You learn the difference between isolation and solitude. Isolation is fear-driven. Solitude is strength-driven. One drains you, the other restores you. And as your inner world becomes quieter, your intuition becomes sharper. You begin to sense when something is off. You feel when a situation doesn't align with your values. You recognize when a door is closing, even if it looks open on the surface. This is not superstition. It's awareness, sharpened by alignment. Over time, this way of living reshapes your identity. You stop defining yourself by your past mistakes. You stop chasing external approval. You stop needing constant reassurance. You become rooted, stable, present. This is when others begin to notice a change in you. Not because you announce it, but because your energy is different. You speak differently. You move differently. You react differently. There is a calmness about you that can't be faked. A quiet strength that comes from knowing who you are and where you're going. And here's the truth many people don't realize. This transformation is not meant to make life easier. It's meant to make you stronger. Life will still challenge you. People will still disappoint you. Uncertainty will still exist, but you will face it all with clarity instead of confusion, with courage instead of fear. Walking by the Spirit does not remove the battle. It teaches you how to fight it wisely. And the more you walk this path, the more you realize that the real victory is not external success, recognition, or comfort. The real victory is mastery over yourself, the ability to choose peace over chaos, purpose over pleasure, truth over illusion. This is how destiny is shaped. Not in dramatic moments, but in daily decisions made with awareness, discipline, and faith. Every time you choose to listen instead of react, to trust instead of panic, to grow instead of escape, you are moving closer to the life you were meant to live. And this journey, though challenging, is one of the most powerful transformations a human being can experience. As you continue walking by the Spirit, something subtle yet profound begins to happen. Your sense of purpose starts to clarify, not in the form of a loud revelation or a sudden certainty about your future, but as a quiet inner knowing that slowly replaces confusion. You begin to feel less lost, even if you don't yet know where you're going. This is one of the greatest paradoxes of spiritual growth. Clarity does not come from having all the answers, but from learning to trust the direction you are being led. At this stage of the journey, many people become uncomfortable, not because things are going wrong, but because the old ways of defining themselves no longer fit. The identities they once relied on start to feel shallow. The roles they played for approval begin to feel heavy. The dreams they chased for validation lose their appeal, and this can feel like loss before it feels like freedom. Walking by the Spirit dismantles false identities. It strips away the versions of yourself that were built out of fear, comparison, or survival. It exposes where you've been living to please others, to be accepted, or to feel worthy. And while this process can feel disorienting, it is necessary. You cannot step into your true purpose while still clinging to versions of yourself that were never meant to last. This is often the phase where people feel in between, no longer comfortable with who they used to be, but not yet fully aligned with who they are becoming. This space can feel lonely, it can feel confusing, it can even feel like you're falling behind while everyone else seems to be moving forward. But in truth, this is one of the most important stages of growth, because this is where your inner foundation is being rebuilt. The Spirit does not rush this process. It slows you down intentionally. It removes distractions. It pulls your attention inward. It allows silence to grow louder so you can finally hear yourself think. And in that silence, you begin to notice something important. Your deepest desires are not about success, recognition, or control. They are about meaning, peace, alignment, and impact. You start to see that much of what you once wanted was shaped by external pressure rather than inner truth. Society taught you what to chase. Culture told you what success looks like. Expectations told you who you should be. But the Spirit invites you to ask a different question. Who are you when no one is watching? What brings you a sense of wholeness rather than excitement? What feels right even when it's difficult? As these questions surface, your priorities begin to shift. You become less interested in impressing others and more interested in living honestly. You start choosing depth over noise. You value substance over appearance. You crave authenticity over applause. This shift is powerful because it changes how you make decisions. You no longer ask, will this make me look good? But will this align with who I am becoming? You stop chasing things that drain you, even if they once excited you. You stop forcing connections that no longer feel genuine. You begin to protect your energy, your time, and your peace. Walking by the Spirit also changes how you view success. Success is no longer measured only by external achievements, but by inner stability. You begin to value consistency over intensity, growth over speed, integrity over recognition. You realize that a quiet, grounded life is more powerful than a loud, chaotic one. And this is where resilience is formed. Resilience is not about being unbreakable, it is about being rooted. When your identity is anchored in the Spirit, circumstances lose their power to define you. You can face setbacks without collapsing. You can experience loss without losing yourself. You can walk through uncertainty without panic. This doesn't mean you stop feeling pain. It means pain no longer controls you. One of the most important lessons walking by the Spirit teaches is patience. Not passive waiting, but active trust. You learn to move when it's time and wait when it's not. You learn that forcing outcomes often leads to regret, while trusting the process leads to clarity. This patience reshapes how you handle obstacles. Instead of seeing them as signs of failure, you begin to see them as refinement. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to strengthen your character. Each delay becomes a lesson in trust. Each disappointment becomes a chance to realign with what truly matters. You also begin to understand that not every door is meant to open, and not every opportunity is meant to be taken. Some doors exist to test your discernment, not to be walked through. The Spirit sharpens this discernment over time. You start to feel when something is off, even if it looks perfect on the surface. You learn to trust that feeling. As your inner clarity grows, your relationships begin to change as well. You become more honest, not harsh, but truthful. You stop pretending to be okay when you're not. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. This can be uncomfortable for people who are used to the old version of you. Some may resist the change. Some may misunderstand it. Some may even walk away, but this is part of the process. Growth often requires separation, not because you're better than others, but because you're no longer aligned with the same patterns. And in this space, you begin to experience a different kind of strength, a quiet confidence that doesn't need validation, a sense of direction that doesn't rely on approval, a peace that doesn't disappear when things go wrong. Walking by the Spirit teaches you that your worth is not dependent on productivity, performance, or perfection. Your worth is inherent. And once you truly understand that, you stop trying to prove yourself to the world. You begin to live from a place of purpose instead of pressure. This is also where your resilience deepens. You stop being easily shaken by criticism. You stop internalizing every setback. You stop seeing challenges as personal attacks. Instead, you see them as part of the process that is shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more grounded. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to trust yourself again, not the impulsive self driven by fear or ego, but the deeper self that listens, reflects, and chooses consciously. You learn to sit with uncertainty without needing immediate answers. You learn to be present without needing constant stimulation. This is the kind of strength that lasts, the kind that carries you through seasons of change without losing your sense of self, the kind that allows you to walk forward even when the path is unclear. Walking by the Spirit does not guarantee an easy life, but it does guarantee a meaningful one. It shapes your destiny not by changing the world around you, but by transforming the world within you. And when your inner world changes, everything else follows. As you continue walking by the Spirit, something begins to happen that many people never experience in their entire lives. You start to recognize the subtle ways you once sabotaged yourself, not out of weakness, but out of unawareness. You begin to see how fear disguised itself as logic, how comfort pretended to be safety, and how distraction posed as rest. This realization is not meant to shame you, it is meant to free you, because once you see the patterns clearly, they lose their power over you. Self-sabotage rarely looks destructive on the surface. Most of the time, it appears reasonable. It tells you to wait a little longer, to stay where you are because it's familiar, to avoid risk because it might hurt. It convinces you that you're being cautious, when in reality you're being afraid. And for a long time, you believe it. You convince yourself that you're being wise, patient, or realistic. But deep down, something feels off. A quiet tension, a sense that you're meant for more, yet somehow holding yourself back. Walking by the Spirit brings this tension to the surface, not to overwhelm you, but to awaken you. You start to notice how often you delay what you know you should do. You see how you talk yourself out of growth. You recognize how you retreat the moment something challenges your comfort zone. And this awareness can be uncomfortable because it removes the illusion that external circumstances are the main obstacle. You begin to see that the real battle has always been internal. This is a pivotal moment in the journey. Some people turn away here. They prefer the comfort of blaming circumstances, people, or fate. But those who continue walking by the Spirit choose responsibility over excuses. They don't condemn themselves, but they stop lying to themselves. And this honesty changes everything. You begin to understand that discipline is not punishment, it is protection. That boundaries are not limitations, they are safeguards. That saying no is often the most loving thing you can do for your future self. The Spirit teaches you that every time you choose what is easy over what is right, you weaken your inner foundation. And every time you choose what is right over what is easy, you strengthen it. This is where true maturity develops. You start to notice patterns in your life, cycles that repeat, situations that look different on the surface, but feel the same underneath. Relationships that follow the same emotional script. Goals that begin with excitement and end in frustration. And instead of asking why this keeps happening to you, you begin to ask what inside you keeps allowing it. This is not self-blame. This is self-awareness. And self-awareness is one of the greatest gifts of walking by the Spirit. As this awareness deepens, you become more intentional with your choices. You no longer act purely on emotion. You pause, you reflect, you ask yourself whether a decision aligns with the person you are becoming or the person you are trying to leave behind. This pause, this moment of reflection, becomes a powerful turning point in your life, because most mistakes are not made out of ignorance, they are made out of impulse. When you walk by the Spirit, impulse loses its control. You begin to respond instead of react. You learn to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. You realize that growth often feels like tension before it feels like freedom. And instead of running from that tension, you lean into it. This is where your character is forged. You begin to see how much energy you once wasted trying to control outcomes, trying to manage people's opinions, trying to predict every possible result. The Spirit gently teaches you to release this need for control, not because control is bad, but because it is exhausting. You were never meant to carry the weight of everything alone. As you let go, something surprising happens. You become more effective. Your actions become clearer. Your decisions become more grounded. You stop second-guessing yourself as much. You trust your inner guidance because you've learned to distinguish it from fear. This inner alignment protects you in ways you cannot always see. It keeps you from rushing into situations that would drain you. It prevents you from saying yes to things that would distract you from your path. It shields you from repeating old mistakes under new names. And sometimes this protection feels like frustration. Doors close, plans fall apart, opportunities disappear. But later, often much later, you realize that what you thought was a loss was actually a rescue. Walking by the Spirit teaches you to interpret life differently. You stop seeing obstacles as punishments and start seeing them as redirections. You begin to understand that not everything that feels good is good for you, and not everything that feels difficult is harmful. This shift changes how you experience challenges. Instead of collapsing under pressure, you become curious. You ask what this moment is trying to teach you. You look for growth instead of escape. And in doing so, you gain a level of resilience that cannot be taught intellectually. Resilience built through spiritual alignment is different from stubbornness. It is calm. It is steady. It does not need to prove itself. It simply endures. Another powerful change that occurs is the way you relate to desire. The flesh wants immediate satisfaction. It craves stimulation, recognition, comfort. The Spirit teaches you restraint, not as denial, but as mastery. You begin to understand that not every desire deserves to be acted upon. Some desires are tests, some are distractions, some are echoes of old wounds seeking temporary relief. When you learn to sit with desire without obeying it, you gain freedom. You realize you are not your urges, you are not your impulses, you are not your cravings, you are the one who chooses. And this realization is life-changing, because once you understand that you have a choice, you stop feeling trapped, you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances, you stop blaming the past for the present, you step into responsibility, not as a burden, but as empowerment. This is when your life begins to feel intentional. You wake up with a sense of direction, even if you don't know the exact destination. You move through your days with purpose, even in small tasks. You speak with more clarity. You listen more deeply. You become more present in your own life. And gradually you notice something else, peace, not the absence of problems, but a steady inner calm that remains even when things are uncertain. This peace comes from alignment, from knowing that you are living in accordance with your values, your truth, and your deeper calling. Walking by the Spirit does not make you immune to struggle, but it gives you a foundation that cannot be shaken easily. It teaches you how to stand firm when life tries to pull you in 100 directions. It teaches you how to remain centered when emotions rise. It teaches you how to move forward without losing yourself. And perhaps most importantly, it teaches you patience with your own growth. You stop demanding perfection from yourself. You understand that progress is uneven, that healing is not linear, that setbacks do not erase growth. You learn to be compassionate with yourself without becoming complacent. This balance between discipline and grace, effort and surrender, strength and humility is the essence of walking by the Spirit. It is not about becoming flawless, it is about becoming whole. And as this wholeness deepens, something remarkable happens. Your life begins to reflect it. Your choices align, your relationships shift, your priorities sharpen. Your destiny begins to take shape, not through force, but through consistency. You realize that the greatest battle was never against the world. It was against the parts of you that were afraid to grow. And by walking this path, step by step, choice by choice, you are no longer running from who you are meant to be. You are becoming it. As you continue walking by the Spirit, something remarkable begins to settle within you, a sense of inner coherence. Life no longer feels like a collection of random events pulling you in different directions. Instead, it starts to feel intentional, connected, guided. Not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because you finally understand what you are moving toward. This is the stage where the noise fades, the urgency dissolves, and clarity replaces confusion. At this point in the journey, you no longer seek constant confirmation from the outside world. You don't need applause to feel validated. You don't need chaos to feel alive. You don't need to chase meaning, because meaning has taken root within you. You begin to live from the inside out rather than the outside in. Walking by the Spirit reshapes how you experience time. You stop rushing through life as if something is missing. You stop living in the future or replaying the past. You learn to inhabit the present moment fully, not because it is perfect, but because it is real. This presence becomes your strength. When you are present, you are grounded. When you are grounded, you are unshakable. This is where peace deepens. Not the fragile peace that depends on circumstances, but the steady peace that comes from alignment. You begin to trust the process of your life. Even when things don't go as planned, you no longer feel lost. You understand that delays, detours, and challenges are not interruptions. They are part of the design. You also begin to understand yourself on a deeper level. You recognize your patterns, your tendencies, your triggers, and your strengths. And instead of judging them, you work with them. You stop fighting your nature and start refining it. You realize that growth is not about becoming someone else, but about becoming more fully who you already are. This understanding brings humility. You no longer feel superior to others, nor inferior. You simply see everyone as being on their own path, at their own pace. This perspective softens your heart. You become more compassionate, not because you force yourself to be, but because you genuinely understand how difficult the human experience can be. Walking by the Spirit also changes how you handle success. When good things happen, you receive them with gratitude rather than arrogance. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth through achievements. You understand that success is not something you possess, it is something you steward. And with that understanding comes responsibility. You begin to ask deeper questions about how you use your time, your energy, and your influence. You become more intentional with your words. You recognize the power they carry. You choose honesty over exaggeration, silence over noise, substance over appearance. This maturity brings a quiet authority into your life. People begin to sense it, even if they can't explain it. They may come to you for advice, comfort, or clarity, not because you claim to have answers, but because your presence feels steady. You listen more than you speak, and when you do speak, your words carry weight. One of the most profound changes that occurs at this stage is the release of fear. Not the absence of fear, but freedom from being ruled by it. You still feel uncertainty, you still face the unknown, but fear no longer dictates your choices. You no longer shrink yourself to avoid discomfort. You no longer abandon your values to gain acceptance. This freedom is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet and powerful. It shows itself in small moments, in your ability to say no without guilt, to walk away without resentment, to stand alone without feeling lonely. You realize that you are not meant to control everything. You are meant to participate in something greater, and when you surrender the need to control, you gain something far more valuable: trust. Trust in the process. Trust in your growth. Trust in the timing of your life. This trust allows you to move forward even when the path is unclear. You stop demanding guarantees. You stop needing certainty before taking action. You understand that faith is not knowing what will happen, but knowing that you will be able to face whatever does. And this is where destiny truly begins to take shape. Not as a fixed outcome, but as a living process, a direction rather than a destination. You realize that destiny is not something waiting for you in the future. It is something you create through alignment in the present. Every choice you make in awareness shapes it. Every time you choose integrity over convenience, patience over impulse, truth over comfort, you are shaping your future. Every time you listen to the quiet guidance within you instead of the loud demands of the world, you step more fully into who you were meant to be. Walking by the Spirit teaches you that your life has meaning beyond survival, that your struggles are not random, that your growth is not accidental, that even your pain has played a role in shaping your strength, your empathy, your depth. You begin to see your life as a story in progress rather than a series of mistakes. You see how each chapter prepared you for the next, how even the darkest moments taught you something essential, how every season, whether joyful or painful, contributed to who you are now. And perhaps the most powerful realization of all is this: you are not behind, you are not late, you are not broken. You are becoming more aware, more grounded, more aligned, more whole. Walking by the Spirit is not about reaching a final state of perfection. It is about learning how to walk with intention, humility, and trust through whatever life brings. It is about choosing growth even when it is uncomfortable, choosing truth even when it is inconvenient, choosing alignment even when it requires letting go. And when you live this way, your life begins to carry a quiet strength that no storm can take away. Your decisions become clearer. Your purpose becomes steadier. Your heart becomes lighter. You no longer feel the need to rush toward the future or cling to the past. You are fully present, fully engaged, fully alive. This is the power of walking by the Spirit, not to escape life, but to live it deeply. Not to avoid struggle, but to grow through it. Not to become perfect, but to become whole. And in that wholeness, you discover something extraordinary. The destiny you were searching for was never somewhere else. It was being formed within you all along.